Hello everyone. In today's session, I'm going to discuss most important give reasons from The Sound Machine written by Roald Dahl. In fact, this is video number 1 and together we will be discussing more than 40 give reasons from this text. Do check the pinned comment section because we have a separate give reasons playlist specially for you, my dear students. Question number 1. It was a warm summer evening and Klausner walked hurriedly through the front gate and around the side of the house and into the garden at the back because the very opening of this story. Because he was making his way back to the unpainted room of the shed he used as a workshop. Unpainted room of the shed, workshop, and making his way back. These are the words, important words and expressions which you must include in your single reason. The next one, question number 2 is very important. Roald Dahl compares the black box about 3 feet long with the shape of a child's coffin because this comparison is there throughout the story. What is the significance of this comparison? Let's read. Because this initial foreboding physical description of the machine. So this is a foreboding. This foreshadows that the experiment is doomed from the very beginning. Nothing good will come out of this experiment of Klausner. Foreboding physical description. The black box is like child's coffin. So this is a physical description of the sound machine and this hints at its propensity for ruin. This experiment is a complete failure and we, the readers, get to know about this by reading the physical description of the machine. Foreboding, foreshadowing. So this is important, dear students. Prepare this reason. Question number 3. All the while, Klausner kept speaking to himself, nodding his head, smiling sometimes, his hands always moving, the fingers moving deftly inside the box because he was preoccupied. Very important word, preoccupied in methodically consulting his diagrams. Displaying restless passion, number 1. Number 2, intense singular drive and focus. And number 3, a sense of urgency. Number 4, and suppressed excitement. These descriptions are there in your text. Read the text thoroughly and incorporate all key words and expressions in your brief reason. I keep on repeating this so that you get used to writing reasons, to framing your reasons. The length of the reasons is not a concern. The length is going to vary depending on the question. Question 4. Dr. Scott came on down Klausner's workshop because he happened to be passing and dropped in to see how Klausner was. So here I have already mentioned 2 important points. He happened to be passing, put a tick, and dropped in to see how Klausner was, another tick, and how his throat was doing. But he found no one in the house. He found no one in the house and therefore he came down looking for Klausner in order to check his throat. See, so many pieces of information all packed together in such a brief and compact reason. Practice the art of framing reasons. Use our videos as your reference material. Question 5. The doctor reminded Klausner that he was still wearing his hat inside the workshop because he takes note of both. Number 1, the tense atmosphere in the room, and number 2, Klausner's preoccupied nature. Klausner was absent-minded. So what was the reason for being so absent-minded? And there was a tense atmosphere in the room as well. Doctor noticed this and he reminded Klausner that he was still having his hat on despite being indoors. Question 6. Dr. Scott made an effort to leave, but just lingered by the door and kept looking at the black box because he was intrigued by the remarkable complexity of its inside. Intrigued, very important and must be there in your reason. He was intrigued by the remarkable complexity of its inside, of the innards of the sound machine, of the box. Curious to know. Another important point, he was curious. He was curious to know what his strange patient was up to. The word strange here is important because Klausner's behavior was not normal. He was being eccentric, unstable, almost unstable, absent-minded. What his strange patient was up to and thereby quench his inquisitiveness or curiosity. You can write inquisitiveness or you can write curiosity. Dr. Scott says, you have made me inquisitive, and I have used that word in my reason. Use textual references in order to frame your reasons. Textual references are very important and you must read the text thoroughly for including all textual references in your answers, be it long answers or short answers. Question number 7. Dear students, we have easy explanation and questions and answers already discussed. So again, do check the pinned comment section for all important video links. Question 7 now. Klausner paused before telling Dr. Scott about his research because he was noticeably having trouble about how to begin. It's there in the text. See, it's so easy. If you read the text, you will know all the answers. He was having trouble about how to begin. This is the reason and you will get full marks, 100%. Dr. Scott felt that somehow there was about Klausner a quality of distance, immense and immeasurable, as though the mind were far away from where the body was, because physically Klausner was a frail, twitchy little man, a moth of a man, dreamy and distracted, and suddenly he was becoming increasingly fluttering and animated. So this is the reason and this is there in your text. So no worries at all. Question number 10. So this was supposed to be question number 9. I have made a mistake in the numbering. No problem. Let's read question 10. Klausner uses the principle of a dog whistle as an example because according to him dogs have better ears than humans and this heightened sense of hearing allows them to hear what to humans registers as mere silence. This is his idea of sounds. Again, use textual references and be careful about the tense that you are using to write your answers. Present tense question, present tense answer. So, be careful. Question 11. Klausner pointed to a fly sitting on a small roll of copper wire on the workbench because Klausner wanted to prove and explain his belief that hidden in inaudible regions there is a music so powerful that it would drive humans mad, and Dr. Scott had questioned the probability of this. Is this probable? This was the question of Dr. Scott. And therefore, Klausner used the example of a fly to discuss and explain his theory. After that, question number 12. Some time ago, Klausner made a simple instrument that proved to him the existence of many odd, inaudible sounds because he wanted to listen to the inaudible sound vibrations in the air, know where they came from and who or what was making them. There are 3 points. He wanted to listen, number 1. He wanted to know where they came from, number 2. And who or what was making them, number 3. Question 13. Klausner made some changes in the sound machine because he was ready for another trial to prove his theory of sound. Question 14. Klausner was hopeful of hearing the inaudible sound vibrations present in the air with the help of his sound machine, although he had not been lucky till then because this machine was designed to pick up sound vibrations that are too high-pitched for reception by the human ear and to convert them to a scale of audible tones. The description of the sound machine is very important. The purpose of its invention is very important. So, read the descriptions properly. I am moving on to question number 15 now. Klausner takes the sound machine into the garden and placed it. Here I'll make a little rectification. Klausner took the sound machine into the garden and placed it on a small wooden table that stood on the lawn because, past tense, because he was finally ready to test his machine, number 1, and hoped that by placing it outside, the reception of sound vibrations would be better, number 2. Question 16. Klausner kept on talking to himself with little words of comfort and encouragement because, another very important question, because when he was finally ready to test his machine, he was afraid. Afraid is important here. He was afraid that the machine might not work, number 1, and number 2, afraid of what might happen if it did. He did not know the outcome, so he was really tensed. He was afraid of his failure as well of what would happen if he succeeded. Klausner watched Mrs. Saunders. Mrs. Saunders' episode is again very, very important. So go through the episode really well. Klausner watched Mrs. Saunders work in her garden without thinking about her at all because this display of lack of attention he pays to his neighbor highlights his singular drive and his primary focus being the machine itself. Understood? So, moving on to the next one. Klausner jumped and dropped his hands, catching hold of the edge of the table, stared around him because as the little needle of the sound machine crept slowly across the dial, suddenly he heard a shriek. So this is important again, and wanted to know its source. Mention this, he wanted to know, heard a shriek, wanted to know its source, as if expecting to see the person who had shrieked. But there was no one around except Mrs. Saunders. And Klausner was really excited. Question 20. Mrs. Saunders became alarmed as she was turning to walk away with her basket of roses because excited. Klausner was really excited. Klausner called her in a voice so high and loud that she was taken aback. Voice so high and loud. You cannot avoid this. You will have to write this compulsory. Next, question 20. Klausner requested Mrs. Saunders to cut another rose quickly because, please cut another rose, because again he heard the scream in the garden and the woman next door was the only living thing in sight, and the scream came exactly at the moment when she cut the rose stem. Again, he wanted to confirm his hypothesis. He wanted to confirm his deduction. He wanted to know what the source of the shriek was. Therefore, he requested Mrs. Saunders to cut another rose quickly. He was excited. He was impatient. Quickly, cut another rose. Again, dear students, we will be discussing other reasons from this chapter in video number 2. So do subscribe to our channel and please tap the bell icon for all notifications.